You couldn't get rid of me that easily. So one costume change later, because I love flatline constructs so much, I I am not muted. That's good. I decided to continue reading more flatline constructs in a completely different stream. I hope that's okay. um, but yeah, so for anyone who didn't catch the first one, my name is Phoebe. I'm a live streamer and book essay narrator. I usually do my Cozy Corner live stream reads in Philbook, which I guess I'll edit into the description. Sorry, it's a cat here. Um, into the description after I wrap up. But I was really feeling Mark Fisher tonight, and not a lot of people in Philbook read Mark Fisher outside of the Mimi stuff. So I figured I would read Flatline Constructs in the Mark Fisher group. And like I said earlier, this is a continuation of an earlier stream. Just now I'm wearing way less makeup, my hair is down, I'm in cozy mode because I love Mark Fisher. So let me just get all settled up here. And so to kind of go back to the beginning, I suppose I wasn't planning on doing this in chronological order, but we will be reading tonight Flatlines. More Mark Fisher, more, but okay. Flatlines by Mark Fisher. Gothic materialism, first principle. The Gothic designates a flat line. Well, if we can get the flat line, we're home free. You know he died brain death 3 times. So I'm just going to pause here and give her exposition. My grad program is literally in religions and new technologies. This is my shit. Cybernetics, the constructed faith. I'm so excited. I love Mark Fisher so much. One of Gothic materialism's crucial concepts, perhaps the single most crucial, is that of the flat line. The concept of the flat line has at least a double sense. Firstly, it indicates a vernacular term for the electroencephalogram readout that signals brain death, a representation on the digital monitors of nothing, no activity. For Gothic materialism, though, the flat line is where everything happens, the other side, beyond or behind the screens of subjectivity. The site of primary process where identity is produced and dismantled. The line outside. It delineates not a line of death, but a continuum enfolding, but ultimately going beyond both life and death. She nodded. Secondly, the flat line designates an immanentizing line, a streaming, a streamlining, a spiraling, zigzagging, snaking, feverish line of variation, a line of variable direction that describes no contour and delimits no form. And also, just so you know, I'm not sure what the hell is going on with my camera where it's doing that weird autofocus thing. I can't turn that off. If I could, I would. But it's annoying me too. Sorry. In Cyberpunk, this emerges as a Spinozoic refusal to distinguish nature from culture, immediately recalling one of the most principal features of the Gothic as reanimated by German expressionist cinema. The famous continuity of the inorganic into the organic, presented in films such as The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, where natural substances and artificial creations, candelabras and trees, turbine and sun, are no longer any different. Flatlined on his EEG, showed me his tapes. Boy, was I dead. The term flatline is central to Neuromancer, also his worst novel. Neuromancer is his worst novel, let's just be real. It is important. Gibson's 1984 novel and the acknowledged urtext of cyberpunk fiction proper. In neuromancer, flatline functions as both a verb, characters flatline, surf what for the for the organism is the border between life and death. And a noun, some characters are flatlines, read-only memory, data constructs of dead people. Neuromancer smears a number of traditional Gothic themes, an unnatural participation, demonic pacts, the escape of the inhuman, the unfolding of the organic into the non-organic, into an ultra-modern updating of the old science fiction story of infotechnical machinery becoming sentient. By the end, it is a story of the convergence of two artificial intelligences, Wintermute and Neuromancer in the Matrix, cyberspace. The AIs belong to Tessier Ashpool, a mysterious dynasty corporation, family organization, corporate structure. Wintermute engineers the convergence using a group of cyberspace hackers assembled by Armitage, a personality construct built out of a schizophrenic ex-soldier named Corto. Wintermute recruits/rescues Corto from an asylum, much in the same way that Dracula, correlate for another earlier form of capitalism, recruited his assistant, Reinfeld. And just a slight small tangent here. In the city I used to live in, and this is right after I've been a pretty serious cyberpunk nerd since I was like 13, 14. But in the city I first went to college to, I knew things were starting to align when I saw a real estate company advertisement, and the name of the company was, I shit you not, Tessier Ash with an E. I was living in a city called Asheville at the time. It's bizarre. But anyway, back to Flatlines. If cyberpunk can function as a new realism, as Jameson, for one, has suggested, it is because it maps the convergence of horror and science fiction narratives in late capitalism itself, a perception consistent with Marx's writings on capital. Marx himself emphasized the Gothic nature of capitalism by deploying the metaphor of the vampire to characterize the capitalist. In the First International, Marx writes, British industry, vampire-like, could but live by sucking blood, and the children's blood too. The modern world for Marx is peopled with the undead. It is indeed a Gothic world haunted by specters and ruled by the mystical nature of capital. He writes in Grundrisse, capital posits the permanence of value to a certain degree by incarnating itself in fleeting commodities and taking on their form, but at the same time changing them just as constantly. But capital obtains this ability only by constantly sucking in living labor as its soul, vampire-like. While it is fascinating to note the coincidence here between Marx's description of capital and the powers of the vampire, it is not enough to say that Marx uses Gothic metaphors. Marx, in fact, is describing an economic system, capitalism, which is positively Gothic in its ability to transform matter into commodity, commodity into value, and value into capitalism. As capitalism exemplifies and outstrips Marx's most horrified descriptions of it, the Gothic escapes codification as a generic psychological or fantastic mode to become the most persuasive materialist account of the contemporary socio and economic scene. For Cyberpunk, Marx's most Gothic language has become his most realistic, whereas his organicist protestations against capital look like antique sentimentalities. What Marx only thought, his fantasy, recodes and reassembles reality, as capital becomes the DNA of determinant technology. Living labor is retrofitted as a mere conscious linkages, reacting to digital stimuli in an automated system of machinery, set in motion by an automaton, a moving power that moves itself. I really wish I could stop my camera doing that thing. Jameson's definition of late capitalism, derived from Mandel, depends upon an identification of just this production of machines by machines. Jameson quotes Mandel on the three general revolutions engendered by the capitalist mode of production since the original Industrial Revolution of the late 18th century. Machine production of steam-driven motors since 1848, machine production of electric and combustion motors since the 90s of the 19th century, machine production of electronic and nuclear-powered apparatuses since the 40s of the 20th century. Processing this perception in advance of Jameson, Deleuze-Guattari's cybernetic realism inherits and supplements Marx's Gothic vocabulary. Citing Marx, they refer to capitalism as a post-mortem despotism. The despot become anus and vampire. Capital is dead labor that vampire-like only lives by sucking, suckling living labor, and lives the more labor it sucks. And also, the thing, the unnameable, the generalized decoding of all flows. Yeah. Just trying to get a bit more comfortable here. Oh, fudge. Okay. There we go. I think that should work. You ever try to crack an AI? The only modern myth is the myth of zombies, they add. Mortified schizos, good for work, brought back to reason. Neuromancer presents a number of variants of zombification. The Dixie Flatline, a read-only memory construct of Case's dead mentor. McCoy Polly, the meat puppets, prostitutes whose brain function is switched off by neural cutout. And the cryogenically preserved Tessier Ashpool clan, who, by the way, make a wonderful triumphant return in, gosh, what is the final one? The last one of the trilogy. Brilliant, but my favorite is probably Mona Lisa Overdrive. The brain-body states neuromancer zones on are adrift between life and death, immediately recalling those which Gothic figures, the zombie, but also the vampire and Frankenstein's creation, have always occupied. Neuromancer decodes horror fiction into realism by refusing to codify these states as fantastic or supernatural, describing them instead as the purely technical exploration of zones at the outer edge of the organism, technical hallucinations. The lead male character, Case, interfaces with Wintermute in states of catatonia, brain death. As the authors of horror stories have understood so well, it is not death that serves as the model for catatonia. It is catatonic schizophrenia that gives its model to death, zero intensity. Sure, I flatlined. Hit the first strata, and that's all she wrote. My Joe boy smelled the skin frying and pulled the trodes off of me. Mean shit, that ice. For Gothic materialism, body horror is not something with which the body is afflicted merely contingently. It is not, for instance, a question of the penetration of a biotically sealed interiority by invaders that may or may not strike, but something inherent to the body at all times and in all operations. Body horror equals cybernetic realism. Cronenberg, one of our touchstones for reality is our bodies, and yet they are by definition ephemeral. Weiner, our tissue changes as we live. The food we eat and the air we breathe become flesh of our flesh of our flesh, and bone of our bone, and the momentary elements of our bone and flesh pass out of our body every day through excreta. We are not stuff that abides, but patterns that repeat themselves. From the point of view of a residual subject, then, Body horror is a horror of the body's terrifying mutability, its sheer meat materiality. Dominic, is that possible for people who aren't like professionals to do? I would love to do that. By its sheer... Oh, I love that sentence so much, I'm just going to reread it. We are not stuff that abides, the dude abides, but patterns that repeat themselves from the point of view of a residual subject. Then body horror is a horror of the body's terrifying mutability, its sheer meat materiality. As Deleuze observes when writing on Bacon, the body is always that which is escaping the subject. It is not me who tries to escape my body. It is the body which tries to escape through itself. But it is also a horror that the body registers itself when, beneath its organs, its senses, there are larvae and loathsome worms and a god at work messing it all up, or strangling it by organizing it. And your EEG was flat. The struggle, then, is not between mind and body, but between different modes of the body, some of which produce transcendence effects at the level of the mentalist and misdeception. So we're faced with cyberpunk, a melancholy, organicist postmodernism always returns to Descartes. Gothic materialism discovers a Spinozism emerging out of cyberpunk's ostensibly dualist narratives. Cyberpunk revives Cartesian skepticism only to materialistically, Spinozoistically, subvert it. Everything that, for the ostensibly skeptical Descartes of the early meditations, is evidence that conscientiousness is the end-all, be-all, becomes, for Spinoza and cyberpunk, a signal that all perception is a matter of body stimulation. By affecting the body, whether it's with drugs, TV, drugs invented or otherwise, you alter your reality. Reality for Gibson's characters may be a state of mind, may be inside a machine. Spoiler alert, sorry. It may be a consensual hallucination, as neuromancer suggestively puts it, but mind, as Spinoza would have it, is an idea of the body. What, from a neo-Cartesian perspective, is an epistemological question becomes, in cyberpunk, a rigorously technical matter. If subjectivity can be experienced by a brain in a vat, as it is in Gibson's Count Zero, what is interesting to cyberpunk is not the subjectivity, but the vat. Well, that's the stuff of legend, ain't it? What for Case and the other console cowboys is mind floating free from the body is really a matter of brain stimulation by electrodes, as Wintermute knows. Its meetings with Case, occur as Case's brain is offline and are constructed out of memories Wintermute has already hacked. Another memory I tapped out of you when I flatlined you for the first time. The real encounter, then, happens impersonally when Case's brain is taken out of sequential time into aeon. But Wintermute relies on the fact that, by the time Case is conscious again, the perceptual consciousness system's organic security apparatus will have narrativized what is basically an interruption of brain function. In personalized terms, packaging it as an experience occurring in Chronos. Case is made to think that he's talked to one of his old acquaintances, the faces Wintermute wears on the Flatline, Julie, Dean, and the Finn, when in fact Wintermute has just precision engineered a near-death experience in order to achieve what at the secondary level is a data transfer. As primary process, this is a storm of an electronic signal, and it is only at the tertiary level that personal experience gets a hook in. This is tantamount to saying that the subject is produced as a mere residuum alongside the desiring machines, or that he confuses himself with his third productive machine, and with a residual reconciliation that brings about a conjunctive synthesis of consummation in the form of a wonder-struck, so that's what it was. Something these guys do is all. Like he wasn't dead, and it was only for a few seconds. And just for anyone, if anyone hasn't actually read Flatlines, which you should, those weird intermittent narrative dialogues I'm reading are directly from Neuromancer. The achievement of the best cyberpunk fiction is to effectuate a critique, fundamental to the Gothic and to the schizoanalysis, of wisdom and limits of the organism and organic harmony. In A Thousand Plateaus, Deleuze-Guattari cite Waringer's work as a forerunner of the critique of the organism and the organic that they had begun in Anti-Oedipus. Waringer's finest pages, they write, are those in which he contrasts the abstract with the organic. In this retrospect, Waringer's work commensurates with that of two other key schizoanalytic figures, Spinoza and Artaud, in How Do You Make Yourself a Body Without Organs? I've always loved that title. Spinoza and Artaud are counted together as precursors of schizoanalysis's engineering of bodies without organization. After all, is not Spinoza's Ethics the great book of BWO? Body without organs? Doi. Artaud wages a struggle against the organs, but at the same time what he has it in for is the organism. The body is the body. Alone it stands, and in no need of organs. Organism it never is. Organisms are the enemies of the body. I saw the screen. E.g. reading dead, nothing moving, 40-second. Neuromancer. The schizoanalytic dismantling of the organism converges Spinoza's sober geometric experimentation with Artaud's catatonic delirium on a flat line where the body, as an open system of possibilities, is always rigorously distinguished from the organism, the homeostatically sealed and hierarchically arranged biocontainer or aggregation of cells. Schizoanalytic desire produces what Case is compelled to do only, if not quite against, then certainly in spite of his will. A de-stratification of the organism that, far from being an escape from the body, is the out-of-body experience. Spinoza and Artaud map. The body without organs emerges on the flat line as the model of death. Antonin Artaud discovered this one day, finding himself with no shape or form whatsoever, right there where he was at that very moment. The death instinct, that is its name, and death is not without a model. Case flatlined on the matrix makes the same discovery. His disassembly singling not the transcendence of the body, but the auto-amputation of the organs. The death model appears when the body without organs repels the organs and lays them aside. No mouth, no tongue, no teeth, to the point of self-mutilation, to the point of suicide. Well, he's okay now. Neuromancer. I'm doing those in an accent so they can, be out of, But what is encountered out here is not death, as the irrevocable termination point in Chronos of the organism. The flat line is not a line of death, but a journey into death as an aeonic event, a voyage into the loops or meat circuits in which the organism falls back towards the process of its own production. It is a simulated or artificial death that marks the outer limits of the organism. Death simstim. E.g. flat as a strap, Malcolm protested. It is, in other words, a plateau, a concept Deleuze-Guattari adapt from Gregory Bateson's Cybernetics. In Bateson's version, the plateau was the type of negative feedback, a variant of which he called steady state, and was opposed to the runaway positive feedback processes he termed schismogenesis. Deleuze-Guattari's plateaus cannot be described straightforwardly as either positive or negative feedback systems. They are dynamic systems, which nevertheless do not burn out in a self-consuming runaway. Continuous regions of intensity, constituted in such a way that they do not allow themselves to be interrupted by any external termination, any more than they allow themselves to build towards a climax. Means of exploring the opening up of the organism that don't provoke it to a suicidal collapse. You dead a while back there, Mom. Neuromancer. I had to do it in the accent. Bateson's work, together with Elade's on shamanism and Carlo Ginzburg's on witchcraft, established that in certain non-capitalist cultural configurations, the dismemberment of the organism is a socially coded ritual practice. And that's literally going to be the subject of my MA thesis, just so you know. That sentence right there. Anyway, back to Fisher. For Elade and Ginsberg, the dismembering of the organs is a preparation for the Germanic voyage into the world of the dead. Neuromancer tells this to Case on the Flatline. The lane to the land of the dead, where you are, my friend, Neuromancer. I call up the dead, but no, my friend, I am the dead, and their land. In capitalism, Deleuze-Guattari claim, this voyage is left to the schizophrenic, who is, they say, trans-alive dead. It happens, he said. I'm getting used to it. Okay, as much as I would just love to read through the rest of the entirety of Flatline Constructs, because like I said, I fucking love this book. It's actually 1:45 a.m. in my time zone, so I'm going to check out. Thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out with me, and I really, really hope you enjoyed. If I get a good response and the admins and moderators aren't mad at me, I may actually just do an entire reading series for Flatline Constructs, because I just love it so much. Anyway, thank you so much. Have a great night, and this feels so weird doing this out of the Philbook or my YouTube channel, but, how does it go? If I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Take care, stay safe from your Gothic materialist cybernetic doomer GF. Good night. Oh, gotta click the button.